And we're back on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Nathan Baird, Andrew Gillis, and it's time to make our game predictions. Andrew, I'm going to let you go first. Right now, the line is Ohio State -3, and the over-under is 55.5. What's your game score?
So I'm going to say Ohio State 30, Notre Dame 20. And my reasoning for that might sound counterintuitive for kind of the score that I just gave, because I think Ohio State's going to cover. I think Ohio State's going to win by 2 possessions. I think Ohio State is going to, in a way that is similar to last year's game, go into the second half. Like at halftime of last year, I think that there was a little bit of a narrative of like, can Notre Dame actually do this? I think at halftime this year, it's going to be more of a Notre Dame can actually do this. It's going to be a little bit more affirmative, but I think Notre Dame just doesn't have the type of talent that Ohio State has. I think that that's going to show out down the stretch. I do think, though, that this is going to be a closer game than the score might indicate, and that some people might think. Like, I think that there is kind of this thought that if Ohio State lets it rip, they're going to win by 40. Like, I think that, I saw this on Twitter a lot, right after Ryan Day said that. And I just don't know if that's true. So I looked up some numbers. Since 2012, Notre Dame has played 14 top 10 games. They are 5-9 in those games. Last year, they played 2, 4, and 6, Ohio State, Clemson, and USC. They lost to Ohio State and USC by 11, and they beat Clemson by 21. Now, granted, those were where those teams were ranked at the time, but they're 5-9, and like that's not overly great. But they typically play these games close. As I look through their schedule, over the last couple of years, they lost the Georgia team that lost in the national championship to Alabama. Notre Dame lost to them by 1. In 2019, Notre Dame lost to Georgia by 6. They lost to Georgia in 2015 on a 2-point conversion at the end. Like if you kind of go back in over the last 10 years or so, Notre Dame hangs tight in these games because they get up for these games. Like, this is Notre Dame's not Super Bowl, but this is Notre Dame's like proving party, right? Like this is our proof of concept game, like I said the other day. So I think Notre Dame's going to come out really fired up. I think that they're going to keep this game close. Marcus Freeman has kind of proven in like a year that you can think he might not be a great coach. You can think that he might not have what it takes to last at Notre Dame, whatever. I think he has kind of proven that he can get his team up to play big games. They hung around with Ohio State. They beat Clemson. They hung around with USC last year, and that was with a quarterback, 2 quarterbacks really, who transferred to different programs and are now at best second on the depth chart. So I think Notre Dame's going to hang around this one. Ohio State's going to get a late score in an otherwise 1 possession game to make this one look a little bit worse than it is. But I think this one's going to be really close. It's going to go down to the wire. It's going to go down to the fourth quarter. And Ohio State is just going to make 1 or 2 more plays just because they have a couple extra dudes on the team that, frankly, Notre Dame does not.
So, Nathan, what's your score?
I'm taking Ohio State 31-23. That would be covering the 3, but coming in under the total right now. And what I keep coming back to is last season, when Ohio State didn't have explosive problems on the defense, when it wasn't giving up explosive plays that were resulting in touchdowns, it was doing a fairly good job of keeping teams off the scoreboard. That it didn't give up a lot of sustained drives. And I feel like this is that is instructive, because I think that this defense is better than last year's was. I think Sam Hartman is a good quarterback, and I think that he is going to be able to move the ball at times against Ohio State. I just don't know how often he's going to be able to complete drives and get all the way to the end zone. And I think that this Ohio State offense, as you're looking at things like the betting lines and stuff that are out there right now, I don't know if they're giving full weight to the process that was playing out in these first games that probably affected the efficiency and those things. I also think it's possible that last week's blowout of Western Kentucky was a little bit of fool's gold, that it didn't necessarily tell us that this offensive line is ready for something like this. It certainly doesn't tell us a whole lot about what Kyle McCord will be like playing on the road against a team like Notre Dame, as opposed to playing, he's never done this at this level, played a game of this caliber against an opponent of this caliber in a stadium that wasn't Ohio Stadium. So having said all of that, I echo a lot of more, maybe the baseline of what Andrew's saying is that I think Ohio State's just the more talented team. And I think some of the experiences that they've been through in the last year, such as the Georgia, Michigan kind of mindset switch that they went through, I think they can carry something from that into this game. So I'm going to take them by a full 8 points. And it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if we saw another tier of Ohio State show up in a game like this. And it's not really anything about Notre Dame. I think it could just be that what we saw in those first couple of weeks from Ohio State was not, from especially from an offensive standpoint, was just not the true identity of this team.
So that's 2 covers so far. Well, one person taking the over, another person taking the under. I'm also going to take the over, and I'm going to take Ohio State to cover. But I'm not with you guys. I think you guys are creating a much more competitive game than I am. I'm going 45-13, and it's because Ohio State's offense, when it's rocking on all cylinders, eventually has that quarter where it just goes Golden State Warriors third quarter mode, where it's just like a barrage of points. And we saw that for the first time against Western Kentucky. I agree with you. There was a little bit about the Western Kentucky game that was fool's gold, but I think that's more in the running game than it is in the passing game. But I don't think the barrage of points they had in the second quarter is fool's gold, because we're 5 years into Ryan Day being the head coach here, and that's always been the case. There's 2 games that come to my mind with why I picked the score that I picked. And it's 2019 Nebraska and it's 2021 Michigan State. And in both of those situations, with Nebraska, there's a lot of similarities there. Now, Nebraska wasn't undefeated going into that 2019 game, so they had already disappointed us a little bit. But there was this thought with Nebraska going into that year that, okay, they played Ohio State tough the year before that at Ohio State. They've got Adrian Martinez, this young quarterback who might be ready to take that next step. Here comes Nebraska, finally ready to live up to its end of the bargain in the Big Ten West. And then Ohio State went in there, and it was a hurricane in the first half, and they never looked back. And the game was over before you even blinked. The same thing happened in the 2021 Michigan State game. That was a top 10 matchup, maybe top 5 at that point in 2021. And Ohio State came out, blitzed them early, and they never looked back. And I thought that Michigan State team was really good. They just could not keep up with Ohio State's offense whatsoever, and they could never bounce back from that. I think that's on the table with this Ohio State Notre Dame game, where it's this defense is just up for it. And whether it's JT Tuimoloau, Mike Hall, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, keep the names listing, somebody does something in those first 2 Notre Dame drives where it gives Ohio State the ball, and now they're up 14-0. And I've always said this, the scariest place for a team who is not one of maybe the 3 best teams in college football to be in is down 14-0 with Ohio State getting the ball back, because now you're in danger of this game being over. And I think that scenario might play out where Ohio State jumps on them early, scores twice, maybe the defense creates a turnover, and now it's a 21-point lead before we even look back. So it's not because I don't think Notre Dame is any good. I think they're a quality team. I just think Ohio State might pounce on them early, and Notre Dame won't have anything to be able to answer with it with. So 45-13 for me, that's Ohio State covering, and that's me taking the over, as we see Ohio State's offense be what we've expected it to be for a couple of weeks now, but we're actually seeing against a quality opponent. So that's 3 covers for Ohio State, 2 overs and 1 under. Those are our picks for the Ohio State Notre Dame game. Ohio State playing in South Bend at 7:30 on NBC and Peacock. If you want to watch it on stream, you can see it there. So those are our picks here on Buckeye Talk.